Welcome to the worst of the best podcast. You wanted the best. Well, they didn't freaking make it. So here's what you get. From Canada, Ryan and
Jason. Welcome to the Worst of the Best podcast. I'm your host, and with me, as always, is my brother Jason. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Ryan. How are you?
Doing well. It's Oscar season. If you could believe it. Do you feel the buzz in the air?
It's funny you said that. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I thought you were joking, but I guess you aren't.
No, I'm not joking. The ceremony, I'm not sure when it is, but it's usually like it's Golden Globes around January, but I think they've already been held. I admit, with COVID, it's been a bit of a gong show for awards in general, for awards ceremonies because of the COVID restrictions and what have you. And
I think, and a lot of people that I've spoken to just about entertainment in general, TVs, movies, I think COVID has exposed the fact that Hollywood and entertainment really isn't the end all and be all. Yeah. A lot of people have just lost complete interest in Hollywood.
Yeah, when I was younger, I won't say idolized, but I definitely got caught up in the glitz and glamour, the award ceremonies, Oscar ceremonies. I used to watch the Oscars, and I enjoyed it like people would enjoy the Super Bowl.
I mean, yeah, we grew up in the same household. So it was, the one time a year where you got to see all your favorite stars in cinema. It felt like a much bigger deal than it really does now. Like, it's really low on the totem pole of people's radar.
I wonder if that has to do with a bit of, I would say, the internet. I wonder if the internet's kind of exposed or oversaturated celebrity. When we were younger, to see us, like, we either saw them in an interview, like on Johnny Carson, or read about an interview with a celebrity or whatever, whoever we were a fan of in a magazine, and then saw them perform or in their movies. So we never saw them like tweeting, Instagramming.
Yes. And I think what is also exposed is how much we don't relate to the way that they behave and think.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's what your view is on whatever,
Sure.
topic is. And, whether it's political or whatnot. And it's just like, oh,
yeah,
I'm not
too keen on that.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't really care about the agenda that you seem to be pushing on me because of the bubble that a lot of these actors have lived in. They think that their opinion is much more important than it really is to the general public. And so they've exposed themselves as being out of touch. I think that's a lot of it too. You're right, the saturation. There's no mystery to them anymore.
Right. Mystery.
And I think also their exposure as to what was mysterious about them is now on full display. We're not really interested in that individual as we once were.
All right, so that's a great build-up as we discuss Oscar.
Way to advertise our own podcast.
On that note, first off, let me just say this is a suggestion from one of our top listeners in the United States. That's our brother Dion. I guess he listens to our show. I suspect he does.
Yeah, I don't think I've gotten any feedback.
He sends suggestions, if that makes sense. So maybe he doesn't listen. He just sees our topics and thinks maybe this would make a good topic of your show.
Yeah, he doesn't listen because he doesn't like the topics we bring up.
That's true.
Yeah.
So he said, why do you guys do Oscar-winning films? So what Jason and I did is we scoured the internet and we put together in a scientific fashion movies with the highest IMDb rating, highest user rating, highest Rotten Tomatoes rating, all those things, put them together. Films that are in the 90-year history of the Oscars. We couldn't pick all 90 films. That would have been ridiculous. So we put together 25 films. But of course, Jason and I haven't seen the same films. So out of this scientific effort of films that we think are very popular in nature of, like, if I tell you the title, you'll be like, oh yeah, that film. Because there's some Oscar winners that if I told you the title, you'd be like, what? What is that film? But I think every film that we mentioned in this episode, people, our listeners, and you, Jason, and I, will know, oh, I've heard of that film. I know the importance of the film, even if we haven't seen it. So Jason has a list of movies that he has seen and has not. And I have a list of movies that I have seen and I have not. And of course, But the majority of them, I think Jason and I being in the same household, about the same age, we're going to probably have very similar have and have not scenes. And how this is going to work is we're going to pick the worst film that we like the least from the scene, and then we're going to pick from the not scene which film we feel we're the least excited to see if we had to watch the ones we haven't seen. So which one is the worst, just by our knowledge or desire, whatever the reason is personal, of course, of why we would pick that one. It's the last one I'd want to watch on the films that I have not seen. So I think that makes sense. What do you think?
Yeah, it's pretty clear.
Okay.
It'll become clear as we do the podcast,
Yeah, I think so.
as we move forward. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So the first one is, and I'll start with my list, and not that my list is more important than Jason's, but I'll just kind of run it, my list, and Jason, you'll say I have or have not seen it, and we'll just go from there. So from the scene list, we'll start with the scene first. The Deer Hunter, 1978's The Deer Hunter.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay. This is a Vietnam drama that is not a very uplifting film, but it did strike a chord with the Academy. This is one of the earlier Vietnam films. You think about this, came out in 78, so this wasn't much after the conflict itself in Vietnam. It is a very haunting film. It has a very long beginning. In fact, one of the criticisms maybe people have of this film is the big wedding, and it takes a long time for kind of, I would say, the action. But I think that's important to see the lives of these characters before they go off to war and what it does to them after war. But that Russian roulette scene, Jason.
That whole movie, I mean, it's been years. I'm not going to pretend I'm
Well, sure, of course.
encyclopedia of this movie. This is the scene.
Yeah.
This is the scene in the movie. And this is an iconic movie moment. And it is what everybody will remember about this movie. It was intense.
Stressful and brutal. Because you know the gun's going to go off on one of those characters at some point, and it does, and it's brutal. Robert De Niro, peak performance. The 70s and 80s De Niro acting, of course, is just amazing. And this is peak Robert De Niro. And just talking about it now with you, it's something I want to revisit again shortly. But yeah, Deer Hunter, 1978, won Best Picture. Kind of a brave choice to win Best Picture.
Yeah, especially considering how close it still was fresh in people's mind.
Yeah.
Because Vietnam had not finished that much ago in the past.
Unforgiven, 1992's Unforgiven.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I saw it in the theaters. Did you watch it in the theaters, or do you remember or recall?
I believe I did. Yeah.
I think this was definitely, if it wasn't the first Clint Eastwood film I saw in the theaters, it was one of the first. Because Clint had a bit of a old him. He's still alive today in his 90s. It's amazing. Because when this film came out in 92, this film came out 30 years ago. So here he is, this aging action star, so to speak. He's only 60, which is kind of like 60 whatever, barely 60 when he made this film. But it seems like when I saw this as a teenager, it seemed like he was what he is now, 90. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, what's funny is that the last 30 years of his career, starting with Unforgiven, is that he's always been this aging character of a bygone era. And so, yeah, like 60, the way that they present him, even in the movie, the very beginnings of the movie, him on the farm with his kids, he's kind of lost his touch with the weapon and with his horse riding abilities. He's beyond his better years, but you're right. He's only 60.
Give or take a year, because I think he's 91
it's
or
like
2 now or something.
Yeah, so it's like the way that people, I grew up with the Rolling Stones. They were always old.
Yeah.
Always old.
They're making fun of
But
the
now-
Rolling Stones' age 30 years ago, but they're still doing it. It's weird.
Exactly. So
Good for Clint. You have to admire his work ethic, his direction of films. He's an incredible director. This film, I love Westerns, and I love this film. This film turned Westerns on their head the same way maybe Spider-Man turned, comic book movies on its head back in the early 2000s. This turned Westerns on its head a little bit. It gave it that dark, gritty, and I think Westerns haven't been the same since. I think since this film, Westerns have come back, and they've never left, and they've been gritty ever since. He's an amoral character. Like, he's the hero of the show, but he's got his flaws, and he's a flawed character. And of course, Morgan Freeman's performance is amazing in it, and Gene Hackman, Gene Hackman, what an actor!
it's a great cast. Gene Hackman won an Academy for his performance in this as a Best Supporting Actor.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I kind of wish there have been more, or are more, Westerns, because I do enjoy a good Western as well.
Can I recommend one then to you that you probably in our listeners probably haven't seen? Underrated and probably underseen. Kevin Costner's Open Range.
Never even heard of it.
Incredible film. Really, it's the same vein as Unforgiven. If you like Unforgiven, And speaking of Kevin Costner, he's had a resurgence in his career with the TV show Yellowstone that's on Amazon here in Canada, Amazon Prime. If you haven't seen it, it is the best TV show ever. And Kevin Costner is
Really?
Yeah, no, it really is as good as people are saying. It's an amazing, amazing performance. Kevin Costner is peak form. He's a fan of Westerns himself. He directed Open Range, I believe, with Robert Duvall's in it. And it's an incredible Western.
Okay.
Yeah, underseen. And I'd recommend that. And also recommend Yellowstone, Jason. Seriously. It's Becky and I, it's our favorite TV show. It's amazing.
Oh, okay.
2016's Moonlight.
I have not seen it.
Okay, so I have seen it. I try to watch most Best Picture winners. I think this is why I saw this film. I think this was the famous... Was this the one where they accidentally named one film the winner and then this was actually the winner? I think it was like La La Land or something like that. One Best Picture, but they read the wrong name and they came back out and said, no, sorry, it was Moonlight that won. Yeah, so I think that's what happened during this ceremony. But it's a very tough watch in the sense it's not a feel-good movie. A lot of Oscar winners actually aren't feel-good films, which I find interesting.
I have no idea what this movie's about.
Well,
it doesn't ring a bell at all.
There's like 3 different storylines in the main character's life. You have 3 different actors playing the same character. You would think it'd be kind of a tonal mess regarding the flow of the film, but it's actually not. It's about the main actor or the main character who is struggling with his sexuality and his strained relationship with his mother. It's a really powerful film in many ways. It really is a very powerful film. It's one of those films where, yes, I'm glad I saw it, but I don't think I'm going to have to rewatch it over and over. It's a good journey, well done film, and yeah, very deserving of Best Picture.
Okay.
The Hurt Locker, 2009.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So, of course, before Jeremy Renner played Hawkeye, he played William James and Catherine Bigelow, who is the ex-wife of James Cameron, in The Hurt Locker.
This was a great show.
That opening sequence, when they're disarming the bomb at the beginning, stressful.
Yeah, similar to like the Russian roulette scene in The Deer Hunter.
Yeah, there you go. Another very tense
Same
moment.
kind of very tense. I like Jeremy Renner, and I wish he did more roles that are like this. This is really his breakout movie, obviously. Like I don't know if I knew of him before this. Kind of only know of him because of his Hawkeye role.
You're absolutely right. He's been very busy in films throughout his career. He was really great in The Town with Ben Affleck.
Yep.
But he is actually on television, Jason, in a show called Mayor of Kingstown. And speaking of, it's getting rave reviews. Of course, he's got his own Hawkeye on Disney Plus. But the Mayor of Kingstown, speaking of Yellowstone, it's actually created by the same guy that created Yellowstone.
Okay.
His name is Taylor Sheridan. He's just on a roll right now with TV shows and movies and writing. So he created Yellowstone. He also created this other one. So Jeremy Renner is the star of Mayor of Kingstown. It's on my queue to watch because I'm following Taylor Sheridan's career. He writes every episode that he creates. It's amazing.
Is he the new J.J. Abrams?
I think so. In that sense, he's the hot writer right now. Yeah. So Jeremy Renner's doing very well for himself right now.
The Hurt Locker. I mean, any other thoughts about that movie?
It's one that I've seen a couple times. So it's one of those movies where it's pretty intense, incredible action sequences, topical for its own time due to the conflict out east. First female winner for directors. But if you can believe it, 2009 was already 13 years ago.
Speaking of movies, we talk about, there's a lot of Vietnam movies, not as many the war in Iraq type movies.
You're right.
This was one of those first to break that ground, to breach the topic of the war in Iraq and the impact it has on PTSD of soldiers and the impact it has on them and their relationships and etc.
Agreed. Yeah, this was kind of in the heat of it. It was controversial. It was a polarizing. Topical. Topical release. Things were still happening in this movie's out. Yeah. You got soldiers watching this while they're out there.
Yeah.
No Country for Old Men. 2007.
Yeah, seen that.
Yeah,
actually, I love this movie.
Yeah, it's such a great movie. The Coen Brothers, they have a lot of great films. I mean, it goes without saying. I'm not saying anything revolutionary here, but they really are a very talented duo of writer directors. They have such a quirky, I don't know how to describe it, unique way of telling stories. Josh Brolin's amazing in this. Of course, Javier Bardem as the bolt gun wielding psychopath.
What a character that guy was. And what a choice of weapon.
Oh, I know, the bolt gun.
That kills cattle.
Yeah.
Also
Oh.
kills people, apparently.
It kills people pretty effectively too. Go figure. It can puncture a cow skull. It can also do the same to a human skull. Yeah, he's such a creepy, menacing villain. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Josh Brolin with the money situation. It's just really what a great. Of course, Tommy Lee Jones playing classic Tommy Lee Jones, and yeah, just a gritty classic and a kind of a western in its own right.
Yeah.
So
In a
speaking
more
of
modern
Westerns.
setting, but yeah, it is got the Western feel or theme.
And even
So-
the side characters, like that grocery store scene.
Yeah, what a iconic scene as well, for sure. That interaction.
1976, Jason, Rocky. You ever seen this one?
Once or twice. I'm not as well versed in it as you are, but I've seen it a few times.
Oh, I know. If anyone's listening to this podcast that listens to my Going the Distance, the Rocky series podcast, I don't have to say much more other than won Best Picture in 76. It catapulted Sylvester Stallone's career. He wrote the film. It was the highest grossing film at the time, raking in $225 million, which today, Jason, the amount of tickets sold, had this movie been released today with the same amount of tickets that were sold in 1976, it would have been $1.5 billion film.
Wow. As you were talking about, this catapulting Stallone into, stardom, because he wrote it, acted in it, and he put his whole life on the line. As we know, the backstory to him putting this movie on the screen, he capitalized on that more than many people do. Many people have an amazing Oscar-winning best director, best actor, whatever it might be, and you almost never hear of them again. But he somehow was able to, and today he's still a relevant household name.
And speaking of Taylor Sheridan again, Jason, the same guy. I guess he's actually creating a Mafia TV show right now for cable TV. And guess who he's going to have star as the Mafia boss leader? Stallone.
I'm going to say Stallone. Yeah, good.
So excited. So this writer guy, Taylor Sheridan, that I'm really excited about right now, has nabbed Stallone late in his career, talk about Twilight career stuff, to play an aging Mafia boss.
That's awesome. He'll perfect that character.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Stallone.
Yeah, very few people. Cuba Gooding Jr., for an example.
Hey, he did Snow Dogs. What are you talking about?
Jerry Maguire, he went toe to toe with Tom Cruise in
Yeah.
that movie. Is won an best supporting actor, and nothing really
No.
from him since.
Murder of Crows?
It's so weird how these people can't just find a way to keep it going.
Well, I'll tell you how Stallone's done it. Because he's got a creative brain. He's created his own success with Rocky, Rambo, The Expendables. And some of these actors, no offense to them, some of them can pick good films, but Stallone's been able to kind of keep his own career going by being creative and making his own films in a sense.
You're right. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
He continues to create his own success, whereas
Yeah.
most others rely on others
to give them
others
to
to
give
give
them
them
the good
that.
roles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, 2003, Return of the King.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Seen that?
Going from Rocky and then Lord of the Rings, those are my two top franchises of all time. I love the Lord of the Rings franchises just as much, if not just a little bit under Rocky. Now, I don't know the Lord of the Rings lore and backstories the way I do with Rocky, but I love these films. I love the vision of Peter Jackson. I saw all three films 4 to 6 times in the theaters each.
Whoa.
Yeah, I bought the DVDs, I bought the Blu-rays, I watched every single extras on each one. I've done the commentaries with even like the producers' commentaries. Like I love these films. I played the video games. So I totally nerd out with these, both the films and the world. I've read the books. I was so happy in a selfish way that this won Best Picture. And was this truly the best film of 2003? Maybe not. I'm sure it's controversial, but it's kind of cool. This is the third film in the franchise. But what I think voters did is they honored the whole project.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can't recall, unless you have notes in front of you, what they were up against.
I don't recall off the top of my head, no. We don't do research on this show. Come on, Jay. Come on.
Is it that obvious?
Yeah, probably. But yeah, I don't recall either. And I actually...
And it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
Because it was an honor to all three. And maybe now looking back, hindsight being 2020, maybe they didn't give Oscars to the other two in preparation for the third, knowing that the third would be released.
I think so. I think you're right, Jay, because they got released one year after another. They were like boom, boom, boom. But every year, Lord of the Rings was nominated for, I believe it was almost every year was nominated for Best Picture and or whatever. But this year, they were nominated for 13 Academy Awards. I think they won all but one of them. So they swept So it's almost like the Academy was, like you said, Jay, they were waiting. Like, we'll give it to you. But even though they got nominated every year for 3 years in a row, it was this film that all of a sudden won. It was like a sweep.
A massive undertaking of filming. And, people know that they spent years in New Zealand putting these together back to back to back. A huge sacrifice to put out a very high quality production. I'm not really a fantasy person. Is this considered fantasy?
Yeah. This is definitely sorcery fantasy for sure.
Yeah. So this isn't really my genre, but the story was captivating enough that I really enjoyed the films as well. I have not seen them more than once each, but I did enjoy a lot.
Yeah, I love these films, and it's a rewatch that I'm going to do throughout my whole life, and I've done it with my kids. And beautiful film, holds up even today because Peter Jackson used a lot of practical effects. He used a lot of models and mini models, which actually holds up over aging CGI.
Exactly.
Yeah. 1969's Midnight Cowboy.
I have not seen it.
I always wondered if you'd seen it. This is one of those films where it's classic. It's got the "I'm walking here" as Dustin Hoffman yells at a New York City cab when it's about to cross the sidewalk. That's where that comes from, that film. This was the first movie at the time. It was rated NC-17 or rated X, equivalent of that today. So it was the first film to win Best Picture to have such a high rating, the equivalent of an NC-17 picture today. Now, I've seen this, and granted it was 1969, so this sounds terrible to say that my modern day eyes, I don't recall why it was so highly rated. I think it was just maybe groundbreaking at the time. If I remember correctly, it follows the story of Joe Buck, played by Jon Voight. He leaves Texas for bright lights of the big city, and he befriends Ratso, which is played by Hoffman. But I think his character, if I remember correctly, was gay. And I think that might have been why it was rated NC-17 for 1969. I think it was just showcasing homosexuality or very openly and the seediness of what they thought of it, or there was a seediness to the film. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I think that's why it was rated the way it was at the time. Great to see Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight in their prime. This was, again, 1969, so quite some years ago. And it's always interesting to see what we consider older actors today in their younger roles.
Yeah, I don't have much to add.
Yeah, figured as much.
Yeah.
So there'll be a couple of those where one has seen and the other one hasn't. Okay. Another older film by an aging actor who's pretty much retired now, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, this was Jack Nicholson, plays Randall McMurphy. He's a wisecracking con artist who talks his way into a mental institution to forego a harsher prison term. Of course, you got Nurse Ratched. You got the pre-Doc Brown Christopher Lloyd playing a patient here. It's fun to see him those younger days. This is probably pre-Taxi, if not just before Taxi.
Oh, yeah.
Alex! So
classic.
I've only seen this a couple times, and I think I actually saw it for the first time. I think it was high school. I think it was just one of those, you read the book, saw the movie in high school type of stuff.
Yeah, what was interesting, maybe that kind of sticks out, is just the situations that people find themselves in within these type of institutions. Some of the harsh realities of what people experience. I know that's not really necessarily the whole point of the movie.
I find these not hard to watch, I should say like that, but it's hard to enjoy watching people with mental problems on a whole film.
Yeah.
It's like, look at me, I'm hurting myself, or I'm smacking my face, or this definitely plays into Jack Nicholson's screen persona of being able to, Jack, when he's able to be full Jack Nicholson, it's always a treat to watch, though.
Yeah, I agree.
Schindler's List, 1993. I saw this in the theaters at the time of its release. I guess I would have been 17, 18 when I saw this in the theaters. Of course, you'd have to live under a rock to not know. It's about how 600 people survived the Holocaust thanks to Oskar Schindler, played by Liam Neeson. Steven Spielberg himself, I believe, is Jewish himself, of course, so this was a passion project to the nth degree to tackle this very serious subject. Steven Spielberg, before this, was very much known for Jurassic Park, the Indiana Jones films, E.T., Jaws, kind of the fun blockbuster type films. Wasn't this his first really major serious topic to tackle?
I don't know about that, but this is a movie that I have seen as well, and I did not see it in the theater. I saw it on video a few years afterwards.
Right.
This is a tough topic. The Holocaust is a tough topic to broach and to enjoy, but an important story to tell, obviously.
This is a movie I would suspect is probably, should they talk about movies in schools, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a movie that junior high and high schools during history lessons, teachers probably show their students at some point during the curriculum.
Right.
Yeah, this is not an easy watch. I saw it in the theaters. I remember just being like, oof, I felt, and rightfully so, like you're watching a masterpiece of filmmaking, but you leave feeling very not depressed, but you're just like, oh my gosh, the treatment of humans by the humans. You're sickened by the fact that people could do this stuff to the. I just don't. Anyways, you and I are, and most people listening to the show, of course, can't understand how you could be cruel to people. But I guess people just, 6 million Jews were murdered, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's unfathomable.
Well deserved, obviously. And I've never seen it since I saw it. I've seen pieces here and there because it's not a movie that I want to rewatch over and over again. So I'm glad I saw it. It's a piece of history and feels
it's
like
heavy.
Film. That's the word, yeah, heavy.
Yeah, it's heavy.
But when I was sailing on my last deployment, this was actually playing in the mess that I eat and stuff. So this was on the big screen TV. People were watching it. So I watched a little bit of it just to remind myself. As I was watching it, I was like, wow, this is from a technical point of view, it really holds up. The black and white holds up. I think that was a very smart choice to do it black and white.
Yes.
It just looks like it was filmed yesterday. I can't believe it's almost 30 years old. Again, another movie, Jay, nearing its 30-year mark.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. We're getting old.
It's just, it just seems like it was just out a couple years ago.
30 years, 29 years ago it was released. Oh, boy.
Now, the other thing is not just an amazing movie, but it's an amazing story.
Mm-hmm.
Storytelling.
The Reluctant Hero, Oscar. All right. Now, I just put these two together, but it's funny that both these won Best Picture. I keep forgetting that. The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, both Best Picture winners. Have you seen the Godfather series?
I have. I don't have quite the emotional attachment to them as others do. Maybe I saw them when I was a touch too young to really appreciate all that was going on. I mean, The Godfather came out in 1972.
Right. Well, yeah, they came out before we were born.
And then 1974, I was a year old. And maybe by the time that they were on video, I don't know if I completely appreciated the cultural impact that they had when they were released.
That's fair. I'm the same way. Well, of course, both came out before I was born. I was born in 1975. But being a bit of a film geek, I love movies. I knew that I couldn't say that I like movies without seeing these films. And I love mafia films. So I actually was a fan of mafia and mob films before I even saw these films. But ironically, the films that I enjoyed before seeing this one, this was the beginning. The Godfather was the same way The Unforgiven had changed Westerns. The Godfathers changed mob films. They've never been the same in a good way. From The Sopranos, of course, they even talk about Godfather on the Sopranos TV show. The Godfather is the godfather of mafia movies and mob films.
Sure.
And Marlon Brando's performance is just absolutely amazing. It's just such a great filmmaking. He put the cotton in his mouth as he gets his he does his motions. He's got cotton in his mouth and amazing stuff. That improvised dialogue that he gives, leave the gun, take the cannoli. It's great stuff. And Marlon Brando's a character within himself.
Yes.
It's been imitated, never replicated, as they say. I think the closest we ever got to this kind of standard of mob film was Goodfellas, directed by Martin Scorsese.
Right.
Which did not win Best Picture at the time. Yeah.
And that's a movie I'm more familiar with.
The incredible films, definitely worth Best Pictures. It's just great that the sequel won Best Picture as well. Many people say the sequel is even better than the first film. I tend to agree as well.
Yes.
Robert De Niro's performance in that. Yeah. Good stuff. No argument there. I don't think that will get our worst choice. All right. Next one. Silence of the Lambs. You ever heard of this one?
This is actually one movie I have seen probably about 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. This started my Jodie Foster crush. So I was 15 when this came out. And I know she does not swing my way, which is fine. I love Jodie Foster. I've been a fan of hers ever since this film. I went back as a 15-year-old kid. I went to the video store, Jay, by her house there on Jefferson Avenue. I went to the video store and I rented every Jodie Foster film I could find. This was before the internet, so I had to buy like a Leonard Maltin movie book to see all the films that she'd been in. All pre-internet stuff, guys, what you had to do. I just went on a Jodie Foster binge. I love her to this day. I think she's a fascinating woman, very intelligent, very classy. I just love everything about her. This is peak, of course, Jodie. She looks fantastic. A well-deserved win for her for Best Actress. And Anthony Hopkins, of course, breakout role for him later in his career, playing Hannibal Lecter. This is such a fun film.
These are 2 actors
head-to-head type thing.
Top of their game,
yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Both of them.
Creepy, thrilling, everything you love in a movie. And yeah.
And what's also, just to go back, what's funny is Anthony Hopkins later in his career, this is 1990.
Yeah.
So this is another thing where he seemed old, but boy, he looks young
Yeah, I know, it's funny.
If you were to watch
Yeah.
the movie today, he looks young.
Yeah, he's old in this film, Jay. He's old. Yeah, but now we're inching closer to his age in this film.
Actually, what is his age in this movie? Yeah, I'm curious now. What's your guess?
I don't know what he is now. So this came out 32 years ago. You know what's funny? I bet you he's our age. I bet you he. Oh no!
Is he 54? I'm gonna
say
54.
he's 49.
No.
Drum roll, please. He's 84 right now, Jay. This came out 32 years ago, so he was 52. Okay, I was off by 3. What did you guess?
I said 54.
Okay, I was off by 3.
Wow.
Just a little bit
Yikes.
older than you, Jay.
He's 3.5 years older than me.
And we thought he was old back then.
I hope I aged better than he did in this movie. But anyway,
Yeah, incredible film.
really is an incredible movie.
That's one you can watch today, and it's just as thrilling and crazy and fun. Yeah, it's an ageless film. Minus a couple of the wardrobe of the actors, it's an ageless film.
Especially the wardrobe of the guy in that pit.
Yeah, his Buffalo Bill? Was it Buffalo Bill?
Yeah, Buffalo Bill. His wardrobe aged.
Yeah, he wore his birthday suit for much of it.
And other people's birthday suits.
He wore other people's birthday suits. That's awesome. Now, have you ever seen Lawrence of Arabia?
Yes.
Yeah, me
And
too.
this would-
Oh, okay.
Yes, this is one that you would have probably seen on TV. I'm pretty sure I've seen it on TV.
Okay.
Like one of those like marathon when movies used to
Sure.
be on TV.
Turner
And
Classic
what
Movies
always,
or whatever.
yeah, and what stood out to me is the amount of people involved.
Thousands of extras. Thousands. How do you wrangle that many people? Okay, everyone, quiet on the set.
Because nowadays, I mean, even when I did see it originally, CGI would not have been a thing.
No.
So I wouldn't have ever thought CGI. But I did think there's a lot of people involved in the making of this movie.
They did a
And it
lot of
shows
that kind of thing back then. Ben-Hur, Cleopatra, those big films of the day where they had to have all these 10 Commandments. You had these thousands of extras running around, bumping into each other.
Impressive.
It's a great movie. Peter O'Toole plays T.A. Lawrence, balancing both arrogance and heartfelt sympathy for the people that the British are invading. It's a long film, but inspired people like Spielberg and George Lucas, of course. One worth seeing again. You know, as I get older, I kind of enjoy these older films and their lack of CGI and their big sets.
Nothing has hurt and helped Hollywood like CGI.
Good point. Yeah.
It is a double-edged sword.
It can show stories that we can't do without. For example, like you couldn't do the Harry Potter films almost without. How do you do Harry Potter? How do you do the Quidditch matches without?
Yeah, but how did George Lucas do Star Wars?
Yeah, I know.
They just took their craft in a very different way, and it forces them to tell a story.
Yeah, you're right. It forces a different way. And I think CGI can sometimes make storytelling lazy.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
That's what makes the Lord of the Rings movies so great, because they did the mixture of CGI with practical
That's
effects.
why it works, and that's why it will work long term.
Yeah.
A lot of these CGI movies don't age as well.
No. Make it as real as you can and use the CGI to kind of fill in the gaps, but don't use the CGI to create everything. Yeah. That's my list of the ones I've seen. Is there anything there that I hadn't seen that you've seen?
Only one.
Oh, which one?
The bridge on the River Kwai.
Really? You've seen that?
Yeah. That's another one that was on TV. I've seen it a couple
I'm
times on TV.
surprised. Okay. All right. Speaking of Star Wars,
You know,
Alec Guinness was in
being-
this.
Oh, yeah. You know, this is a movie from 1957. I can't give you a massive rundown, but
When we created this list, Jason, that was actually one of the ones where I was like, this is one I would like to see. I like war movies. This is World War II, about the enslavement of Allied prisoners who were forced to build the Burma Railway. So it exposes the truth behind Japanese prisoners of war camps. So I would like to see that.
yeah. So other than that,
The rest we haven't seen. Okay, and the rest we'll talk about right now. We both haven't seen 1961's West Side Story. It's a musical, isn't it? Is that a musical?
yes,
Is it called-
I think it is.
Is that the one where they're snapping their fingers? They're going against each other. Two gangs are snapping their fingers at each other in a snap off or whatever.
No idea.
Okay. Go ahead.
You hear about it all the time.
Right.
Referenced.
Steven Spielberg, he just directed the remake.
Yes, I did know that.
And it didn't do very well, I don't think. I don't know if it did well or if it's reviewed.
Oh, I was just about to ask, was it released already?
Yeah, it's come and gone. And I think part of the come and go is the COVID issue. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere right now or how you can watch it or even how well it was reviewed or not. Interesting project for Mr. Spielberg to do, I guess, but he can do whatever he wants at this point.
Right.
Amadeus. Now, this came out in 1984. I hesitated seeing I hadn't seen it, but I'm pretty certain I haven't.
Yes. I think I've just seen enough clips over the years that I feel like I have seen it, but I don't believe I've seen it from beginning to end.
This is a biopic, of course, of Wolfgang Amadeus. I haven't seen this film, but the character deserves an updated biopic. I don't know why. I feel like I'm sure maybe this film's great and all. It won Best Picture, but there's a part of me that feels like maybe I'd be interested in an updated miniseries or biopic on. The only thing I know about Amadeus, of course, is that song, Amadeus, Amadeus, Rock Me Amadeus. Remember that song?
Oh, for sure. I know that song much more than I know anything about the movie.
Yeah. Well, it's directed by Milos Forman, who actually directed, I believe he directed Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as well. 2 Best Pictures for that guy.
Huh.
On the Waterfront, 1954, another Best Picture with Marlon Brando, because he did that Godfather, of course. Now, this is one I definitely want to see. This won't be my worst of regarding the list of not seen, because I really would like to see some earlier Marlon Brando stuff. This is about the real-life story of the New Jersey whistleblower and the tale of corruption on the docks. So that's kind of interesting. This is Marlon's one of his biggest roles, right?
I'll be honest, I never heard of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And I'd just like to see that more younger Marlon Brando stuff. Back when he was the hunk that he was.
Yeah. More the hunk and less the chunk.
Yeah. This is one of his biggest roles before he became a big role. Sorry. I'm surprised we both haven't seen this. There's a couple here. I'm like, okay, we're going to be shamed by listeners. 1939's Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I'm not typically been drawn towards... It's a musical, right?
No, Gone. I'm keeping that in. No, it's
yeah, please, because I'm totally ignorant about this movie.
No,
I know people reference it all the time. Is there not song and dance in it?
Oh, maybe they've done a musical from. No, it's actually adapted.
Okay.
It's adapted from a novel. So the novel came first. Still to this day, Jason, the most successful box office movie with adjusted for inflation. This movie has sold the most tickets out of every film ever, more than any Marvel film. This film has sold the most tickets in 1939.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so no film has sold more tickets than Gone with the Wind. It's the tale of romance and injustice during the American Civil War. I wonder how much time has passed between Gone with the Wind and the Civil War and Gone with the Wind and now. That'd be an interesting math.
It would be closer to now. Civil War. I mean,
it was 1800s, right? But you think about this in 1939. We're nearing the 100-year mark.
Ryan, I think our lack of both math and history is showing really strongly right now.
The Civil War ended in 1865. Minus 1939. 74
What?
years. Yes.
From the end of the Civil War to this movie
was 74 years.
Man, a lot can happen in a short period of time, eh?
So there we go. We're not as bad as we thought. So 74 years passed, and this film was released, right? Okay, so 1939. You think they would have released it sooner, but they just didn't have the filming technology. So 1939 minus 2022, 83 years. So it's been longer.
Wow.
Stand yourself corrected, Jason.
I do. But again, my math skills, my lack of understanding history.
This was long before television, TV, movies. So,
the Civil War, I'm thinking like technological. Like I'm envisioning what they had technologically seems so behind the ability to have a film.
Yeah. So isn't that crazy? So more time has passed now, Jay, between the release of this film, then the release of this film, the Civil War ending and starting, quite frankly. Wow.
It's like one of those brain exercises where they say the iPhone is closer to Cleopatra than Cleopatra was to when the pyramids were made.
Oh, weird. I know that kind of stuff gets weird.
Very, very interesting.
Even earlier film than Gone with the Wind, Jason, was 1934's It Happened One Night.
Okay. I'm not familiar with this one.
It kind of paved the way for the modern romantic comedy.
Okay.
It took the conventions of the post-Depression era, when women were in pursuit of financial security, and twist them into something fresh. So It Happened One Night has been redone in many different ways throughout the years. Of course, like most of these films have been, I wouldn't say ripped off, but these early films had the advantage of being the first. From The Godfather to Gone with the Wind, all this stuff, kind of setting the path of future films. It Happened One Night, I believe it has been remade or redone in many ways.
Almost every romantic comedy are always just repackaged.
Right.
Storylines.
This is the Godfather of the romantic comedy.
It might be actually an interesting one to check out.
I agree. I would be interested in seeing the idea of the first romantic comedy. And it won Best Picture, which is quite interesting. Those early days of the Best Picture. Very early days.
Yeah.
1960, The Apartment, another comedy winning Best Picture. A lot of comedies in these early days winning Best Picture versus the depressing films of today. This had Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. Very young looking Shirley MacLaine here.
And she's pretty.
She's very pretty. Absolutely. Yeah. Apparently, it was a game changer back in the day. It was of what Hollywood could get away with. So Jack Lemmon plays Baxter, who is an insurance agent who lets his office pals use his apartment to entertain their mistresses, all the while struggling to find love himself. So he had a bachelor pad that he loaned out to his guy friends to get busy with their girlfriends. I guess they didn't have places that they could be alone. That's weird.
They didn't want to have their receipts for the hotel.
I guess so.
Be found out.
So I guess Shirley MacLaine plays a elevator operator. Maybe she lives in the apartment building. So she's taking these guys up and down the room, and Jack Lemmon falls for her. I guess that's interesting.
Yeah, that is a very interesting story.
Now this next one, again, I'm surprised I haven't seen it. It's one that I know I got to see. I have to watch. Speaking of Gene Hackman, I'm surprised you haven't either. And people are going to be like, The French Connection. I've heard so much about it. I've heard it's Gene Hackman's best performance. It's the beginning of that gritty, 1970s filmmaking, and heroines being introduced in the films now, and dirty cops, and just that early gritty filmmaking. This is like the early days here.
I mean, it's been in the background of my mind as a movie. I mean, 71, still a couple years before I was even born.
Right.
But it is where Gene Hackman really broke out and his acting chops for everybody to see. But it's just not one that I've seen myself. And that's another storyline that's been done 1,000 different ways.
Yeah. This is another sets into motion that cop gritty drama type stuff. Absolutely. And the war on drugs. 1977, a romantic comedy, Annie Hall. Woody Allen's film back in his peak of his career, his heyday. I've seen a few Woody Allen films. I actually went through, I guess it was like the late 90s, early 2000s. I kind of went through this video store binging. I rented a lot of Woody Allen stuff, but I don't think I did Annie Hall. So it's funny that I have it on my not seen because I don't recall that I've seen it. But I did go on a bit of a Woody Allen binge. If that's my answer to. Well, this is before he slept with his stepdaughter. I don't think he adopted her yet in 1977. But so Diane Keaton plays Annie Hall in this film, and it's interesting because she was in the Best Picture winner Godfather 1 and 2, and then this one as well. So she's been in a few Best Picture winners herself, and she's good. She's actually very good. I enjoy Diane Keaton. When I see her in movies, I find her very easy to watch. Very easy. Very good actress.
I have nothing really to add other than it's a movie that has been associated with Woody Allen, and that's about all I know.
1952, All About Eve. I know I've heard this title. Stars Bette Davis, Margot Channing, but I don't know anything about this film.
Who's that guy in that picture? Is that like a young Steven Seagal?
Yeah, I think it stars young Steven Seagal. Now I gotta watch it. I guess it stars these two actresses, and they play characters who are flung together in the timeless story about our resistance to growing old. And they don't look old in this film.
I've seen this picture here. I actually feel like I have seen portions of it on TV.
Oh, it'd be one of those on Turner Classic Movies or whatever.
Yeah.
That's one I wouldn't mind seeing. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Now, last but not least, and people are going to be like, are you kidding me, you two? That's fine. They can. 1943's Casablanca, or Casablanca, however you want to pronounce it. It's got romance. It's a thriller. It's a war-torn actioner. Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, two lovers who can't be together. I have not seen this.
I've seen portions of this.
Sure,
on
the
TV again, but
of all the bars, of all the places, isn't that the one? Of all the bars, of all the
here's looking at you, kid.
That was that one too. Yeah. I think there's those two lines, and mistakenly played against Sam, which did not come from this film, but a lot of people credit that part to this film.
Mm-hmm.
But I think his character, Humphrey Bogart's character, does tell somebody to play something or do something. But anyways, yeah, I haven't seen this film, and I think I actually started to watch it one day, or I knew I was going to have to watch this, and I kind of put this up there with one that I have to definitely watch. It's considered to be what it is, right? One of the greatest movies ever made, really. Do you think you'll ever watch this one day?
I very well could. Probably should, just as far as understanding classical movies and the impact that these type of movies have had on film and the film industry, and why would it have been a best Oscar-winning movie? It intrigues me.
All right, so that is the 25 films that we have and have not seen that are Best Picture winners that are culturally and critically, of the 90 films that have won Best Picture, we felt were worth talking about. Of the seen films that one Best Picture that you've seen, which one is the worst for you?
I'm going to have to pick One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Mm.
It's just not a movie that I would care to see again. I don't think it has aged very well in my memory. I haven't seen any of these movies in years, but I don't think it's aged particularly well. It's not scenes that I would want to see, like how you kind of mentioned earlier. I don't want to see people started with mental illness and
slobbering in the mouth.
Yeah, and all those things, and it's not something I want to enjoy or make light of or whatever. It's not of an interest for me. Most of these other movies, if I had time, would enjoy watching again.
All right, so for me, for the ones that I've seen as well, I'm pretty close with you on that, and your reasoning is very sound on that film. But there's one that, almost for the same reasons, just even when I saw it, I was like, I don't know if I'm enjoying this. It's been so long, but I did watch it as an adult. There's a reason why I've never gone back to it, and that's Midnight Cowboy. And 1969's Midnight Cowboy. Oh. It's an interesting to watch, and I almost would recommend, if you haven't seen it, go ahead and watch the first NC-17 picture winner to win Best Picture. It's an interesting piece of history, if that makes sense. But the characters and the storyline didn't draw me in. You got movies like, of course, Rocky, No Country for Old Men, The Godfather. It's like, that's what I mean. I'm just like, The Godfather Part 1 was only 3 years after this film. So you just got that level. It's just a different level of film. Of this list, Midnight Cowboy, if I had to rewatch all these again, Midnight Cowboy would be the last one that I would rewatch.
If you had not seen that, or if that wasn't on the list, would you have picked One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest would not have been that choice. However, it would have been Moonlight. And the reason why Moonlight is because it's a hard watch in many ways to see the struggles of this individual. And it's just, I recall it being, I don't even remember now, but I don't think it's a feel-good film in the sense. I don't know if it's exciting. I could watch The Unforgiven a million times because it's exciting in its own way, or The Hurt Locker. Again, with Moonlight, it's the rewatchability. It doesn't take away from its technical or acting that's in the film. It's amazing in that right, but the rewatchability factor is pretty down.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So for our not scenes, this will be a little interesting. So this is basically, you were given the task, Jason. You have to watch all these films. You haven't seen them, Jason, but now you have to. But I'll give you one that you don't have to watch. Which one will you not watch?
Annie Hall.
Yeah, I figured as much.
I've seen a couple or portions or chunks of his movies, Woody Allen. I do not relate to his storytelling at all.
He's got a weird cadence to his rhythm of dialogue that he does in all of his films. So it's kind of like, if you don't, like Quentin Tarantino has a rhythm to his films, right?
Sure.
So does Woody Allen, and Woody Allen has been made famous for that rhythm. So either you get the rhythm, like the way he talks. He talks to this. It's weird. He does that throughout all.
That drives me.
Yeah.
Just as you do that.
You know what I'm talking about?
Drives me crazy.
He does that in all of his films, and so I'm with you, Jason. It's Annie Hall.
Good.
For whatever reason, Woody Allen is an esteemed filmmaker. Good for Woody. All these other ones, as I look at the list, they're actually legitimately ones I wouldn't mind seeing at all. So
yeah, some of these older ones, from the 30s, the story is kind of intriguing to see how they would have told that story back in the day.
Yeah, see that piece of history.
It's more compelling than anything that
Woody Allen.
Stop. Just
All right, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Remember, in front of every silver lining, there's a cloud. And today it was, for Ryan, it was Midnight Cowboy and Annie Hall. And for Jason,
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Annie Hall.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Gamma Gator Productions.